What's up, college football addicts? Today we're going to talk about conference realignment and Notre Dame. I thought today would be a good day to toss you guys the mic, so we're going to do a mailbag episode and lead off with Notre Dame. As you guys know, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are no strangers to controversy, but before we get rolling, thank you for joining us today. I'm very happy to have you here. Happy Easter to those of you who celebrate. Hopefully you're able to spend some time with your friends and family and really take in what this weekend is all about. I know I certainly will throughout this day. Now, we've had a few controversial videos and controversial episodes in a row. Some of you guys have enjoyed them, but some of you didn't at all. We clearly hit a couple of nerves with some of you, and you gave us complete and utter heck down in the comments. But what I want you to know is that I respect all of your opinions and your love and passion for this sport of college football. You are addicted to it just like I am. If you weren't, you wouldn't be commenting and arguing with me down below. We don't have to agree on everything here at College Football Addiction, but if you are realignment junkies, if you're college football junkies, if you are obsessed with this sport like I am, I appreciate your passion, whether we agree or disagree. I love how passionate you guys are, and even when we disagree on things, we usually keep it pretty civil. I try to respond. We try to answer and talk with you guys as much as we possibly can down in the comments, and I know that some channels aren't able to do that, but that is one thing that whether you like us or not, you at least maybe appreciate that we will chat back with you if you're not a complete troll. Now, before we get started, I do want to thank everybody for their questions down below and their comments. Our first comment came from Show Me More, who said, Notre Dame screwed the Big East, and it has now screwed the ACC as a result of being partial members. This was predicted when the ACC jumped into bed with them. Notre Dame could save the conference, but its selfishness won't allow it. For a Catholic university, it sure makes moves like the devil. In the end, a conference is a group of schools that work together to make it better, which in turn improves their status. When a school like Notre Dame only partially joins a conference, it doesn't try to make the conference better. No, it only cares about itself, which in turn creates resentment and division, and then you have a collapse. Thanks, Notre Dame. Well, I see we're starting out, even though it's Easter, with knives out today. And I think there's an argument to be made that Notre Dame's impact on the ACC and the Big East, when added up, may not have been helpful to the future prospects of those conferences. And I think the ACC made a huge mistake with allowing Notre Dame to participate during COVID. And I think the ACC should have, at that time, forced their hand, even if it would have pushed them to the Big Ten. Now, before you Notre Dame fans start running down to the comments to start defending, in your defense, I think Notre Dame is by far the program other teams are the most jealous of, and not necessarily because of football talent, because if we're talking about football talent alone and jealousy, that would certainly be Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. But because you guys have the history, the tradition, the passion, the brand, the influence that few other programs could even dream of happening. Notre Dame fans or haters, I want to hear from you guys on what you think about them specifically. If you think that Notre Dame is partially responsible for blowing up the ACC and the Big East, post that word guilty. If you think that Notre Dame is innocent, let me know. Just post the word innocent in the comments. Now, our next comment came from SRUCKEL. S. Ruckel, I'm not sure, but said, perhaps FSU, Clemson, UNC, NC State, Miami, Virginia, Virginia Tech should join with Notre Dame and form a new league with a new NBC contract. Now, I'm sorry, Strukel, but that would have been a happy story a few years ago, maybe for everyone but Notre Dame hardcore independents, but I do think that ship has sailed. The Power Two, meaning the SEC and the Big Ten, have likely pushed us beyond the point where something like that is plausible. And yes, the Big 12 and ACC fans, we know you guys are in the Power Four, but let's be honest with ourselves, that is in name only. Because you have two conferences making twice as much as the other two, I think it's kind of disingenuous to assert that they are equally powerful. Our next comment was in regards to our video about the Big Ten and the SEC taking teams at a permanently discounted rate. This comment came from Kafka Karaoke, who said, those teams should take the discounted payout in the SEC or the Big Ten. I'm a Big 12 fan, so I hate this idea. However, he said, it makes sense. I just hope neither the SEC or the Big Ten are ready to expand past 20 teams right now. If they are, this can get ugly for us too. He said, let the Big 12 eat, let room for 3 at the table. Kafka, this was a very good point, and we appreciate hearing from someone in the Big 12. If the SEC or the Big 10 started taking teams with permanent discounts, it would definitely come at some cost to the Big 12. But this also may make sense competitively. If you have teams that are closer to the SEC or the Big 10 level of income and expenditure, there's a good chance that teams would dominate in the Big 12. I think everyone's ideal outcome would be to make all the conferences as competitive as they could possibly be. Our next comment comes from Tim, who said, everyone keeps talking about North Carolina and North Carolina State being inseparable. Have we not just recently watched Oregon split from Oregon State, Washington split from Washington State, Oklahoma split from Oklahoma State, and even Texas A&M and Texas had a split for a time? Don't forget UCLA abandoning Cal. These state-level legislators and university systems are toothless. Now, we certainly did strike a nerve with some NC State fans when we called North Carolina Big Brother. Heard from a lot of you who told us that we were sleeping on NC State. And based on how you guys have done in the NCAA tournament, let me be the first to congratulate you. You are certainly backing it up, and you guys' run has been one of the more fun ones that I can remember in recent college basketball history, and hopefully it continues on. Our next comment came from Jeff, who said, I agree, TJ. I'm a Miami fan, and I do think over time Miami would be worth adding to the Big Ten at a reduced rate at first. Our games against Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, USC would draw great viewership. Excellent idea. Now, Jeff, I'll tell you, it is a little bit rare to have a Miami fan with a logical take. I certainly have only met a few. Shout out Coach Coop. But we agree. And most Miami fans would say TJ doesn't have very rational takes either. So I get it. But Miami needs to do everything in its power to get into the Big Ten as quickly as possible. And a discounted rate is smarter than holding out in the ACC or going to the Big 12, in my opinion. However, we need the Miami AD, Dan Radakovich, to get off the ground and stop groveling at the feet of the ACC. Have some self-respect. Buddy, you came from Clemson, but you didn't bring any of that tiger juice with you. You cannot be scratching the ACC's back at this point. I don't understand that. I give Miami fans an incredibly hard time about a lot of things, and I admit it. I troll you guys a ton. But when I'm telling you that your AD's got to grow a pair and get rolling, and I know I probably shouldn't say that on Easter, but here we are, he's got to get off the ground, and he's got to stand up, and he's got to do what UNC and Clemson and Florida State are doing, because Miami cannot get left behind in all this. I appreciate you for the comment, though. Not many Canes fans love me. That one meant a lot. Our next comment came from Jeff, who said, the Big Ten has always shared money evenly amongst its members. Even the teams that have had to buy their way in have only done so with temporary discounts. A permanent discount would set a precedent that would enable Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Penn State, USC to claim that the Purdues and Northwesterns of the world should also be forced to take a discount. While there would be many whose values would appreciate an arrangement that also allowed those who brought in more revenue to take a larger share, it is not the way the conference has done things in the past, and most of the league would probably vote against setting that precedent. Now, Jeff, if there's anything that we can absolutely be confident in college football, it's that we cannot be confident in anything. And I get it. Would that set a bad precedent? In theory, it would. But, Jeff, I'll answer your question with a question. Should teams who invest less in football get as much as the teams who invest in football? Example, if Ohio State invests X and another team, I'm not going to call anybody out, but another team at the bottom of the Big Ten invests half of X. And so Ohio State is willing to put into the sport, which grows the conference and helps the conference exponentially. And that program at the bottom of the Big Ten is only willing to invest X cut in half. They get the same media rights deals. They've been around for a similar length of time. Does it not make sense for Ohio State to get more rewarded than that program? I'm not saying that the Big Ten should automatically go in and start slashing everybody's revenue that's not investing into it, but the revenue reports for these universities are become public. We know what these universities are making. Some of the private schools, tougher stuff to find. Usually you can get some of that stuff out. You kind of know where and what's going on. But should everyone get that equal cut of the pie if the investment level is not the same? That's not necessarily an easy yes or no question, in my opinion. Now, I don't even attribute it to success. Ohio State has some built-in factors that are going to make them more successful than Illinois and Rutgers and Wisconsin and other programs, most programs in the Big Ten, right? That's why they've had more success than most programs in the Big Ten. But investment is what matters. And being able to put back into the pie should potentially determine what you're taking out of it. Just food for thought. I know that a lot of food puns there with piece of the pie and food for thought, but something to think about. Next comment from Mark said, I miss the old days when people in schools weren't so casually talking about completely destroying sports programs of other schools just to get themselves a little extra money, and calling them group of five schools is crap. Ideas like this are going to completely destroy college sports, because I guarantee you when all these schools who you consider lesser are gone, people aren't going to jump on the bandwagon of the nearest power school just to get a sports fix. People are loyal to their schools and will just tune out. And that is going to cost a lot of revenue in the long run. Mark, I hear you there. There are a lot of fans feeling like this. And I know that these are controversial conversations. And I know that when we refer to teams like Wake, Stanford, Cal, SMU as group of five schools, it is offensive to those fans. But there is something critical here that you need to understand. When we started paying players, the days of low-spending schools competing with high-spending schools ended. That cat is not going back into the bag. And that's good, because players deserve to be paid for their hard work and the physical beatdown that they endure. But the reality is that 99% of the players who are going to take the most money, just like you and me would, when we are looking for jobs. What's happening right now in college football is a realignment. We're not splitting college football into haves and haves not. We're splitting college football up based on financial investments into your football program. Those teams who invest the most will be in the Big Ten and the SEC. The teams who invest in the middle of the pack are going to be in the Big 12. And those teams who invest the least will be in that group of five category. Within your realm, things should be far more competitive. The SEC Big 10 will compete. The Big 12 will compete. And the ACC, American Conference, others will compete and be very competitive there. But hearing a Wake Forest or a Stanford fan argue that they should be in the Big 10 or the SEC is like hearing an accountant with a dad bod and a beer gut argue that he should be playing baseball for the Braves. When you're paying players, you have to spend the money if you want to be in the major leagues. But if you go down to your local parks, you'll see thousands of softball teams filled with dads across the country. And there may be a better fit there for the competition level that you're looking for. It's absurd to think that some of those lower programs are going to be competitive if they're not investing. And so Group of Five is not meant to disparage them. Group of Five is calling them a lesser program is not meant to disparage them, but they don't have an investment at the highest level. And if you don't have an investment at the highest level, it's hard to think that you're going to remain competitive in this sport. Next comment was in regards to our video on FSU and the Magnificent Seven possibly going independent next season. It came from Solid Foundations, who said, SEC fan here, following your content in terms of this for a couple of months. I've liked your comment, but this sounds like a wild claim with no concrete proof. Just so I have this right, you're saying not only FSU is going to go independent this year, but 7 other teams, the Mag 7 and 1 other team, are also going independent for this upcoming season, which is 5 months away, by the way. And in doing this, they not only make more revenue, but dissolve the conference. Dude, that's only something an FSU homer could come up with. Well, 10 months ago, we put out a video saying that the best way for the ACC to dissolve would be for the Mag 7 to go independent and work with each other, following the same rules as the ACC. I still believe that this is the most logical path forward for these teams. I absolutely think the 8 teams should work to dissolve the ACC. And once it's dissolved, those 8 teams should play nicely with all of the ACC teams who vote not to dissolve. And for this 1 year, they should split their revenue equally. And for this 1 year, they should all work to find a new home, whether that's in the Big Ten, the SEC, a discounted rate at one of those, or maybe in the Big 12. Or whether that home is in the new group of 5. Now the players are getting paid. All these ACC teams must go to where the competition level matches to what they're willing to spend on football. And you can do that a lot easier without ESPN holding a gun to your head, threatening to cut your revenue by 75% because FSU, Clemson, and UNC left. But these middle ACC teams may have to learn this the hard way going forward. And that's going to suck for you fans who have to live with it until 2036. Does that end up happening? I lean toward it's very possible. Is it a done deal? Is it set in stone? No, nothing is. This stuff changes daily. Is it possible? Absolutely it is. Our next comment came from Tim, who said, this whole thing is very dangerous for CB as a whole. Losing 50% of eyeballs is a real possibility if it's only 40-ish teams. Again, Tim, I don't see this as much of a threat. College football will still have as many teams as it currently does. Once they get everyone separated out among the teams who are willing to spend similarly to them, the competition will be better than it ever has been, and fans will flock to it. When RPO came into the game, they said that'll ruin the sport. When conference realignment came into the game, they said that'll ruin the sport. When the transfer portal was wide open, they said that'll ruin the sport. When NIL came into the game a couple years ago, they said that'll ruin the sport. College football's viewership is up higher right now than it has ever been. And do I love every single change that college football has made over the last couple of years? Absolutely not. Have I watched more college football every year increasingly across my TVs? Absolutely. Our next comment was in regards to our video on FSU and the Mag 7, possibly going independent, where Art said, if that was tried, why wouldn't the ACC cancel all the games with FSU, even if they had existing schools schedule each other 2 times? What is FSU going to do? FSU is not right about the grant of rights. If the ACC did that, who would FSU to get to fill their schedule? And no, the ACC does not seek to control FSU after they leave, just that they pay up before they leave. Florida State has 7 games on its schedule that are locked down, either because they are non-conference, under contract, or because that they are Clemson, UNC, who are going to be joining them. Outside of those 7, the ACC would be shooting itself in the foot financially if it canceled any FSU road games, where 100% of the money goes to the ACC. I don't think ESPN would allow the ACC to cancel those games. They'd also be having to cancel any games against Clemson, UNC, and other teams that chose to partner with FSU. There are games the ACC would not cancel. Second, I think if the ACC said you're not allowed to play these games to its members would go to court and say they cannot do this. There's nothing in their contract that says they can say who we can and can't play because they're upset at the way that FSU acted. And I think a judge would rule with the ACC's members, and they would not let the ACC stop them from competing against any team that they wanted to compete against. The ACC has never said, you're not allowed to play this team. Remember a couple of years ago, I think it was Wake Forest and UNC even played a game that was a non-conference game. They just needed a game to fill their schedule, and so they played each other. The ACC has never told a team, you're not allowed to play against this team. And I don't think they would do it here either. If they did, I think a court would strike them down on it and not let that stand. Danny said, still a Nebraska fan here and a Big 10 fan to support the conference. I'm still glued to the conference realignment content, wondering what teams will be in the conference next. Your content is by far the most sensible of any I have found on realignment. Most others are Big 12 fans who think they can have the pick of the best ACC schools. I, for one, hope that the FSU and others make their way to the Big 10 and bring back to Omaha for the College World Series. I hate seeing the SEC win it all. Man, let me tell you, I appreciate your comment for 2 reasons. One, you call me sensible, which I do agree we are pretty sensible. People didn't think that after the Magnificent 7 independent video that we did last, but that's okay. Let us have one where we go out there and go out on a limb. If we're wrong, you guys can chastise us later. That's fine. And then second, I'm a huge baseball fan, and watching Florida State be a little bit more competitive in baseball this year and have a really good record, only have 4 losses, 6 games into the season, is a lot of fun. Next comment came from Mr. Rogers, who said, who is sitting with the ACC in court? ESPN. Didn't look the best for FSU in court the other day. You signed a contract twice voluntarily and want out and free. That won't happen. Listen, I get this comment a lot. Didn't Florida State sign the grant of rights? Didn't Clemson sign the grant of rights? Didn't Miami? Didn't UNC? Didn't these teams sign the grant of rights? And the answer to that question is unequivocally yes, they did. Florida State's argument is not that the ACC held a gun to our head and made us sign this agreement and did it in a dark alley where we couldn't make out what the wording. That's not the argument. The argument that Florida State is making is that the ACC has not held up their end of the bargain. You and I could sign an agreement today for me to ask you to put a new roof on my house. And you could say, now TJ knew he signed that agreement, right? Absolutely. But what if you only put the roof on half the house? What if you only put it on 75% of the house? Why is Florida State bringing this argument now? Why are they bringing this lawsuit now? Well, they don't think that the ACC has continued to do what they need to do. They don't think that the ACC has held up their end of the bargain. What do I mean by that? They don't think that the ACC has remained a competitive conference and done their best to honor their fiduciary duty. That's a big lawyer word for you that we've talked about a lot on our first channel. But they don't think they've upheld their fiduciary duty to be the most competitive and put FSU and the other members of the ACC in the best position possible. They also don't believe that the way the contract is written would be allowed to penalize FSU for leaving with an exorbitant media rights fee that no other conference would have to pay. And so that's their argument. They signed the agreement. They absolutely did. But if you and I sign an agreement and then I say, I don't think you're holding up your end of the bargain, and I sue you and you tell me, I think I am holding my end of the bargain up, guess what we do? We go to court. It'd be small claims at that point. It wouldn't be a multi-million-dollar contract dispute. But Florida State's alleging that the ACC hasn't held up their end of the bargain. Everyone is mad at Florida State for suing. People sue. There is a subset of law in our country called contract law. There's personal injury law. There's criminal defense law. There's real estate law. There is political law. There's all kinds of things. And one part of law is contract law. Now, Florida State's just saying that they didn't hold up their end of the bargain. You may not agree with that, and you may say the ACC's done a phenomenal job. I would probably say you should take a breathalyzer test if that's your argument. But the argument is not that Florida State didn't sign the contract. I don't know why we continue to get that comment. The argument is that Florida State doesn't think the ACC held up their end of the bargain. And that's why it's before a judge right now. And we're trying to figure out if they did. Next comment comes from a user who said, how about we get rid of ESPN? College football did fine without them. Before ESPN, college football did fine. Well, user, I think a lot of people feel that way about ESPN. Here at College Football Addiction, we have pulled no punches when it comes to ESPN. Ask Kirk Herbstreit. But there are times when someone has to be the bad guy. So I guess they may be a necessary evil. But it doesn't mean that we have to like it. And I darn sure don't think that it means we can't point and laugh at them when things happen that are out of their control and don't go their way. Our very last comment, thank you for sticking around in this video if you have, came from Tim, who said, I heard you out and still think that you're crazy. That being said, the ACC as we know it is toast. Put some butter on it for me. The next round of talk will be if the ACC leftovers can compete with a leftover Pac-12 in forming the premier group of 5 conference that includes Toledo. Listen, you guys can think I'm crazy all you want. You guys can argue with me down in the comments all you want. I very much appreciate the banter, the conversation that we have down below. We really do try to read every single comment, and it is very tough to respond to every one of them because you guys are rabid, and I have 3 kids and only so many hours in the day. But we reply to a lot. We reply to a lot more than most people do. And when we get 500 on a video, we try to reply to 500 of them, or at least like it so that you know that we saw it or agree with it or think you're funny. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate when you call me out. I appreciate when you tell me that I'm crazy. I appreciate you for all of the support. Positive, negative, share the videos, like the videos, subscribe to the channel. All those things, it's very much appreciated. And you don't have to think that I'm right about everything. I don't care. I have my takes. You have your opinions. We get along just fine with that. Thank you guys for letting me do this. Thank you guys for continuing to tune in. Thank you guys for being part of the channel. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a wonderful Easter. It's our longest video yet. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I like the mailbag episodes. I like responding to you guys directly. And hope to talk to you guys soon here on College Football Addiction.